Good morning. Thank you to everyone. We've been able to have such a wonderful retreat together. The organizer, Mate and Tundi in the background, and our new Jiki, first time for you here, right? New Jiki Przemek, and all of you who have worked in various ways to keep this retreat strong and constant. It's been wonderful to practice together. We still have a few more hours. Let us continue right up to the end to make best use of this precious opportunity. Unlike the other days, today, this last day, one of the things we need to take up, to raise, is, so to speak, returning to the world. How to do this in such a way that it supports the practice as well as our daily life. If you're relatively new to the practice, after the retreat, you may want to give a couple of days, rest up, take a nice hot bath maybe, enjoy a walk in nature if that's what you like to do. You will also probably have to catch up with a lot of things. Give yourself to them as you gave yourself to this practice. Those things are just as important as what we have been doing here. But take a couple of days and see if the practice calls you back. Zen is not the only way. So you might want to take a couple of days and just let it rest. And then see, does this practice call you back? Well, then you have what you need. You have a solid foundation now to continue. If not, as we say in America, there's more than one way to skin a cat. It's a rather bizarre metaphor, but I'm not sure what they did after they skinned the cat. Did they eat it or what? But you understand the sense, huh? There's not just one way, huh? The best way is to find the way that you must go. And reading spiritual traditions, meeting different people, all this can be very valuable. But finally, you have to answer the call from the depths of your own heart. At the end of the day, as we say, at the end of the day, when you put your head on the pillow to sleep at night, have you fulfilled that which is deepest within your own heart? And if you find, again, this is the way for you, well, you have what you need. Hopefully, you also have a sangha, a community of like-minded people around you. If not, online works as not the same thing, but it's something. But to keep the practice going after the retreat in a realistic way. In other words, tomorrow, you don't need to try and sit 10 or 12 hours. That's what we've been doing during the retreat. All good and well. From tomorrow, you will have other things to do. do them well. I would suggest you don't go back with the sense that you have attained some deep enlightenment here and now you will return to the world of samsara and enlighten those individuals who were left behind. That's probably not the best attitude to go back. Instead, you might want to go back open and curious. What was their experience while you were here sitting on your butt for 5, 6 days? What was their experience? Maybe they were covering for you, doing the work and so forth that you were supposed to do. If you can't find it there, you didn't find it here. Consider well when you go back. At the same time, if you decide that you see that this is the way for you, find a realistic, practical way to continue the practice in daily life. Not 10 hours a day, that's fine. You don't need to sit 10, 12 hours a day. That's what we were doing here. From tomorrow, find out how to do it in a realistic, healthy, well-rounded way. You need time for your work, your career, your family, your friends, your hobbies. Yeah, you don't have to throw that stuff away. But it can be a natural part of the practice if you're able to continue giving yourself to it. That means also being able to discern, to clearly see what does need to be done. And perhaps what should you no longer do. It's not productive, it's not good, it's not healthy for you or for others. Drop it. I trust through practice like this you can come to see what it is that really needs to be done in this world and what doesn't. What can be counterproductive. You think it's going to bring this result, but it doesn't at all. For example, if someone gets angry at you, being full of hatred and being angry back at them and having a feeling of revenge and so on, well, you know where that goes. Take a look at the world today. No, you don't remain blind and just let people do whatever they want. No. But to be able to respond in an appropriate way. When all is said and done, out of love, out of compassion. That might mean saying no. Yes. True love can say that. It's not just a matter of, oh, do whatever you want. It's all good. No, it's not. You must be able to discern, to clearly see that. I trust you see how the last 5, 6 days of practice has cleared the way for that. You can, after the retreat, find a time so that you can regularly sit, perhaps in the morning before the people you're living with get up, so that you don't disturb the daily routine. You can have breakfast with them. If you have a chance in the afternoon, yes, half an hour in the evening before you go to bed. do everything you need to finish the day. If you wear pajamas, you put on your pajamas. You brush your teeth, set the alarm, whatever it is. Everything is done for the day. Time to go to bed. Sit then. Sit then. Your mind is free from everything of the day. It's been done. Maybe after 10 minutes, you'll be tired. You'll find yourself falling asleep. Well, everything's done. You got your jammies on, your pajamas. Lay down, go to sleep. If you're doing it well, you will sleep very well. Other nights you might find that you're fired up. And you might sit for an hour or 2 hours. That's fine. I assure you, good zazen is better than bad sleep. We all know what it's like to lay there and sleep for 6 or 8 hours and wake up feeling worse than when you went to bed. Sleep is not necessarily restful, is it? But if you sit for a while, then when you go to sleep, you can sleep much better. And I trust you found the last 5, 6 days, once you get settled, you don't need as much sleep. The equanimity, the balance that you find in sustained zazen. I'm no doctor, medical doctor, but I reckon it's at least as good as bad sleep, maybe better. So again, find time, if you find that this is your way, to do it. A half an hour of very good concentrated zazen. Everything else is done in your daily life. Your other responsibilities, done and done well. Now, you only have 30 minutes until the next thing. Well, you can really give yourself for 30 minutes to zazen. It's better to do that than to try to say, I'm going to sit 2 hours every day, and then meanwhile, you have 2 hours to sit there, but there's so many things that are left undone. You're sitting there thinking, I got to remember to make that phone call. And I forgot to send that email. Again, quality, not quantity. A half an hour of good zazen where you can just give yourself to it is better than 2 hours of haphazard thinking about all the things that need to be done. Zazen. It's not zazen at all. Again, the quantity, we press that a little during retreat. Hour after hour of sitting. And there's a good reason for that. Daily life, go for quality. Go for quality. Again, there are many groups around the world. Hopefully there's a Sangha near you. If not, there are online Sanghas. I know, I thought it was really strange. You're going to sit there in front of a camera on your machine and look at other people, looking at other people sitting. It's pretty weird. But actually, it works in the sense that you can sit there, and we have several groups on our website if you want. You can just join in. People from all over the world can join in too. So you can be sitting there with someone you know or don't know from Australia, Spain, Canada. It's wonderful. It's wonderful. It's not the same as, obviously, as being in person, but it's something. It's important to sit by yourself at times. It's not just a social act. We need to sit by ourselves, but it's also very valuable to sit with and for others. When you go back, see those difficulties that arise, the things that don't go well, the conflicts. Let them be your teacher, and you can learn a lot. When you find yourself getting angry, for example, with a workmate, someone you don't get along with, and all of a sudden there it is, that same old pattern in your mind, thinking about what a complete idiot this person is. Probably always was and always will be. See what your mind is doing. See what you are doing to that person. No wonder you can't hear him. You've already turned him into the biggest idiot around. Again, don't just accept whatever anyone says or does, but first of all, really be there and listen. What are they really trying to say? Can you hear perhaps the dis-ease in their voice, in their heart? Respond to that rather than getting defensive or angry. Can you see where that person is coming from, even though you may completely disagree with them? Okay, that's fine. You can agree respectfully to disagree. But can you really hear where they're coming from? If you can, relationships can take a real turn. Again, I'm not saying you have to agree with whatever anyone says or asks of you. But first of all, hear and see. Where are they really coming from? Then you can respond. No, we're not going to solve all the problems of the world, but we can start with those right around us. Over the last several days, we've heard many comments from other participants, very practical things about how to respond to pain, wandering mind, thoughts, things like this. Today as well, many of us have been to many retreats, and we know what it's like to have a retreat high, as we call it. That's it. Maybe you're exhausted physically, but clear as a bell, as we say. Really, really settled, calm. It's wonderful. After a couple of days, often that starts to perhaps get a little dull. Experience it. Don't hold on to some mental state that you attained here and try to keep it. There's no state you need to be in. Then you can really respond, you see? Does anyone have a question or concern about, so to speak, returning to the world, this very practical matter? Or if you have some helpful suggestion that you have learned through your experience. Carl.
Jeff, I can get along pretty harmoniously with people around me. Sometimes I struggle watching news, world news, and sometimes what I perceive as evil, brutal, ignorance, and arrogance, yeah, it moves me, and it's not very healthy. Just could you comment on this issue, please?
Yeah. I trust we all know exactly what you mean. It's kind of nice to have 5 or 6 days where you don't have to watch that stuff, but I assure you, the problems have not been solved while we were on retreat. When you go back tonight or tomorrow. First of all, as you rightly are doing. You are listening and hearing, and sometimes it's horrifying what a person can do to another person or people. But if we simply respond with wanting revenge, or just anger and hatred, where's that going to go? It's going to continue the same thing. One of Gautama Buddha's most popular expressions, you see it all over the internet, is hatred is not appeased or put to rest. Hatred is not appeased, hatred is not appeased with hatred. It can only be appeased with love. Well, a love that can truly respond, not just come and blow my city up. No, it doesn't mean that. But how to respond in a way that is effective. We know, as I think you used something like blind, ignorance, hatred. Well, if we fall into that same pattern, we're not going to solve anything. We're just going to become a part of the problem. So that's where the precious, sustained practice, it starts to work in us. We start to realize, wait a minute, I don't have to respond. Well, no, wait a minute. There are other ways to respond to this. But first, as you suggest, we have to open our eyes and see what the actual situation is. What is the actual situation? It can be difficult to fathom because the news of 50 years ago is almost gone. Now it's so biased. So much of the so-called news is really just the person or organization pushing their own agenda. So it's hard to know what really happened. What really happened? If we listen to one side, well, it was their fault. We listen to the other side, it was their fault. Well, what do we do now? Okay. We weren't there, we don't know. We have to trust on what we hear. So if we can at least get fairly reliable information, we can start to respond and perhaps become politically active if that's something that you feel the need to do. But don't do it from one side or you'll just continue the problems. I'm sure there are other people that are much more knowledgeable about this than myself. I left the world 50 years ago or so. I have to plead very guilty to not. I made a decision to stop trying to deal with it on that level because I realized, in a sense, the futility of it. We're not going to create a utopian world, But we can come to the end of suffering and help others do that. And that would be the real root of peace in the world. Mikhail, you were, I believe, a radio journalist, so you must be much more knowledgeable about this than I am. Is there something you'd like to say? How do you respond when you see this shit happening?
I'm paralyzed as you and as you. I don't know how to react as well. It's a very difficult situation.
Yeah. To begin there, to honestly recognize that. And, for example, do I have the answer? Maybe not. But let me see what I can learn and how I can respond in a genuine way. But it's not easy. But it is called for.
Yeah.
Piotr, yeah.
I guess I also, when I look at the news, there's also so much information. it's hard to decide what's what.
Yeah.
So I kind of decided to, yeah, I'm trying not to ignore what's happening in the world because it is happening.
Yeah.
But I tend to focus on my direct environment and my neighbors, my family,
Yeah.
the people I meet in the shop,
Mm.
where I am at the moment myself, and
Mm.
that's the only place of influence I have and how I react to the world. And it still, makes me sad when I think about everything happening in the world, but I can't change it. So I start with my direct environment. It's in my experience, the only thing I can do. That's, yeah.
Thank you. Yes, Balázs.
I just have a comment on news that for several years I stopped reading news as a daily activity. So I just reading social news, so people telling me what happens, and if there is relevant to me, I go deep and find the details, of course, in the newspapers. But in general, I skip that activity that I'm daily reading news just for reading news to get to know what happens. I only read the news of my village, which is quite small. And I feel better.
Mm.
It's not the old news of this 8 million people is not disturbing me on a daily basis.
Mm.
Szeretnék valamit mondani. Komoly dilemma ez, mert a mi kis elefántcsont tornyunkba nagyon kellemes visszahúzódni, és nem tudomásul venni a külvilág történéseit.
It's really a serious dilemma because it's very easy to withdraw to our, what is that?
Ivory Tower.
Ivory tower
Yes.
and neglect the happenings of the world.
Mm. So Ivory Tower, this place where we're saying, maybe we could also say return to our little cushion.
Hát ez az.
Yeah, that's it.
De én úgy gondolom, hogy a gyakorlásunkból kifolyólag felelősséggel tartozunk nem csak a közvetlen környezetünkért, hanem a társadalmi felelősséget is kell, hogy érezzünk.
But I think that because of our practice also, we are in a way responsible not only for our immediate environment, but also for the larger social context.
De ez nagyon nehéz ügy, pontosan az információk megbízhatósága szempontjából.
It's a very difficult issue exactly because of the reliability of information, or unreliability of much of the information we have.
De én úgy gondolom, hogy a legfontosabb dolgokban a zen gyakorlónak, mármint nekem, állást kell foglalnom.
But I ultimately think that in the most pressing issues, a Zen practitioner, that is me, or you all, have to take a stance.
Ami, ahogy az előbb mondtam, nagyon nehéz, mert az információ megszerzése az egy elég bonyolult és könnyen jégre visz bennünket.
Which is a very difficult thing because, as I said, getting the right information is a very hard thing, and we might easily slip aside with that.
mégis bele kell fektetnünk a munkát azért, mert társadalmi lények vagyunk, és nem zárkózhatunk el. Pontosan azért nem zárkózhatunk el, mert bizonyos áttekintésünk van az emberről, önmagunkról, ezáltal a világról is.
But I think that because we have like an overview of ourselves, of the human being, and of the world at large, because of that knowledge or overview, we have to invest time and work into fathoming these informations, and based on that, take a stance or form an opinion.
De ezzel kapcsolatban, tehát a társadalommal kapcsolatos vitákban nagyon-nagyon óvatosnak kell lennünk, mert nem tudjuk, hogy pláne most a magyarországi kiélezett politikai küzdelmekben, hogy kit bántunk meg a legmélyebb érzéseiben.
But we have to be very cautious when we take a stance or form an opinion, because, for example, now in Hungary, in this very opposed, very polarized social and political situation, we have to be very cautious because we never know whom we might offend very deeply in their identity with our comment.
Úgyhogy én azt mondom magamnak, hogy csak óvatosan Béla, empatikusan Béla.
So I'm telling to myself, just cautious, be cautious, Béla, with empathy, Béla.
Thank you. I remember as a child, small child in elementary school, learning about the Revolutionary War and American history. Of course, now I see in some ways a very biased point of view, but one of the things that still brings tears to my eyes is the statement, "I completely disagree with what you have just said, but I will defend with my life, if necessary, the right for you to say it." This is largely absent in the world today. When I was young, late 60s, I was a, I have to say, wannabe social activist. You know what a wannabe is? Want to be. In other words, not really, but a wannabe, we say. A wannabe something, a wannabe Hollywood star. I was a wannabe social activist. I didn't really understand enough to be a effective social activist. I was just a kid. But now, after a good 50 years of Zen practice, I can say without doubt or hesitation that for me, there is nothing more important and valuable to do than exactly what we have been doing for the last several days together here. How is that going to affect the world? Well, let's see. As I said, we're not going to solve all the problems of the world. We're not going to turn it into a utopian, idealistic dream. This is childish nonsense. But we can respond with not just love, but compassion, wisdom that is compassion, compassion that is wisdom, and do some good in the world. Just as we gave ourselves here to this practice, we can now, from today, return to the world and see what we can do without naively dreaming, but to do what we can. And I can think of no better way to prepare for that task than what we have been doing here in retreat. Can you? This, what we have been doing here, must work itself out in the world. In that sense, sitting on the cushion 10 hours a day is easy. That's the easy part. But we are ready for the challenge. Just as you have given yourself here to this fundamental practice to clarify and put an end to the source of our suffering. It naturally. How far does it go? How far will it? Who knows? Who knows? Who can calculate this? And yet, we do what we can out of love, out of compassion. It's a very natural American English expression that sums up what we have done here and what we need to do when we go back to that troubled world. In one-on-one with Per this morning, it somehow came up. It was a sports newscaster in America. Don't need to know the details, but he was talking about a basketball game where at the end of the game, all of a sudden, the team that had been losing the whole time managed to win. And he just yelled out, "The opera ain't over until the fat lady sings." Do you understand? No? Yeah, well, I'm glad. Opera, we know what opera is, huh? And for example, Beethoven's Ninth or Wagner's, a lot of time at the end of one of the rounds, there will be a woman singing the final aria. Huh? But this was said by a sports newscaster who had probably never been to an opera, probably didn't even like it. But in order to relate it, to connect it, he said, "It ain't over, it's not over. It ain't over the game, life, our practice here. It ain't over until the fat lady sings." You are that fat lady. Sing. Sing. See what you can do when you go back to the world. Don't get hung up with the techniques. We have worked on the techniques. One of the reasons, thanks to Adam, the videos for the retreat from a year ago were sent around so the participants, you could actually see what we went through a year ago. Very practical things about the body, the breath, the mind, problems that arise. the intention was by preparing that way, we can just dive into the fundamental and we don't have to go over and over and over again. My legs hurt, pain, so on and so forth. No. These are not the real problem, although they can be huge in the beginning. But the techniques that we learn and some of the insights that people have offered, very practical insights, how to respond to particular problems in our practice, very valuable. But if we turn the technique, if we obsess about the technique constantly, for example, trying to perfect the breath or something like this, it can actually become counterproductive. It can take you away from the fundamental issue, you see? So be careful. Please learn, master the techniques physically, how to sit with the breath, how to use the breath in a way that brings, like a magnet, like gravity, all of that energy into one, And then what to do with the mind. What to do with the mind. These techniques can be very helpful, but again, don't obsess about them. Let them do their work. In time, they will. If I can give another American saying or adage, this goes back to, must be 75 or so years ago. Ty Cobb. Does anybody know Ty Cobb? Ty Cobb was the greatest base stealer. In baseball, you can steal a base, you know how that works? Baseball isn't so big here. So if you've hit the ball and you get to first base, if something happens, you can run to second base. For example, if someone hits a pop-up, and the person in the outfield catches it, you can touch first base, and then if you can run to second base before the ball is thrown and you're tagged out, you're now on second base. Then you can get to third base. Then you can get home, get home run. You understand? He was the greatest base stealer because he was so fast in the history of baseball. Ty Cobb was his name. And he would slide anyway. In other words, there's about 2 seconds from one base to another, running really fast. And then sometimes you slide head first, and if your hand touches the base, you're safe, you see? But other times you might slide feet first. One of the reasons you would slide feet first is because if you do it right, you hit the base and you can immediately stand up. And then if something else is happening, you can run to another base. So there are many ways to slide. And there was a news reporter who had analyzed from TV all of the different slides that Ty Cobb made. And so he asked in the interview, Ty, at what point from one base to the next, at what point do you decide which slide you're going to take? And Ty Cobb said, oh, hell, I just slide. It doesn't mean he didn't know. He knew all of that so well that he finally, oh, hell, I just slide. Finally, learn it all. Please learn the technique. Find out what works for your body, breath, and mind, and then just slide. Are there any remaining questions? We have about 5 minutes left. Sorry, it's a baseball analogy here. It's not a baseball culture here, huh? Let us continue right up to the end. Again, thank you all for your questions and concerns, especially today, returning to the world. In a sense, there's the real retreat. Begins when you get back to the world. Let us do that together as well. Thank you all.